CEO of the Bedford County Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber's Board of Directors and the Chamber Foundation Board of Trustees, I'm pleased to welcome you to our Candidates Forum for Pennsylvania's 13th Congressional District. We're looking forward to an evening of valuable information as we hear from candidates vying for the seat in this newly formed district, including all or parts of Adams, Bedford, Blair, Cambria, Cumberland, Franklin, Fulton, Huntingdon, Somerset, and Westmoreland counties. We thank the candidates for being with us this evening and for sharing their perspectives on issues of local and national importance with our community. I would like to thank our partners and sponsors for this event, our host, the Bedford Area School District and Superintendent Dr. Alan Sell. The event is sponsored by P. Joseph Lehman Incorporated and Stifler McGraw. We thank their representatives here this evening. And we also thank our partner in education, the Bedford County campus of Allegheny College of Maryland. Special thanks to the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee, the Bedford High School Interact Club, and AV Director Dan Wakefield. The Bedford County Chamber of Commerce views our organization's advocacy role as one of education and information. We do not endorse candidates, and we are a nonpartisan organization. We work cooperatively with all of our elected officials toward the betterment of our region. We are proud to present this important opportunity to the business community and the voting public this evening, and we encourage you to exercise your right to vote in the Pennsylvania primary. At this time, it is my honor to introduce our moderator for this evening's forum. At Franklin and Marshall College, Dr. G. Terry Madonna is Director of the Center for Politics and Public Affairs, Professor of Public Affairs, and Director of the Franklin and Marshall Poll. For more than 30 years, Dr. Madonna has taught and written about his two academic specialties, the American presidency and American political parties and political behavior. He holds a PhD in political history from the University of Delaware. He founded the Keystone Poll in 1992, the oldest survey produced exclusively in Pennsylvania. It was renamed the Franklin and Marshall College Poll in 2008, and he continues to serve as pollster for many media outlets, including Philadelphia and Pittsburgh newspapers and television stations, among others. We are honored that he brings his vast knowledge and experience to our forum this evening to serve as our moderator. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Terry Madonna.
Thank you. Can you all hear me out there? I'll project as loudly as I can. I'm delighted to be here. Let me say, first of all, I was here back in 2006 for a state senate debate, and again, I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to have the candidates come out on the stage right now. I'll introduce them by name. I want to point out that in your program, you have a 250-word description written by the candidates that contain information about their biography. If I went through that, it would take up half of the 2 hours that we're going to be here. This forum runs from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, about 8:45. I'm going to stop the questioning and we'll go to a 2-minute response to open-ended commentary period, 2 minutes each for the candidates. So candidates, come on out and take your seats. While they're coming out by lottery, they were given seats 1 through 8, and the questions will be alternated. The first candidate, question number 1, the second question will go to candidate number 2, and so forth. And we'll just move down the line with the responses right in the order. I want to point out that Representative Stephen Bloom cannot be with us this evening because the House of Representatives is in session. So he is there and cannot be with us, but 8 candidates are here. And I'll just quickly go through mentioning them by name. These are the names that the candidates chosen for me to use when I'm addressing them. So beginning with number 1, Ben Hornberger, number 2, Travis Schooley, number 3, Colonel Mastriano, number 4, Bernie Washaball, candidate number 5, Brent Ottaway, candidate number 6, Captain Halverson, candidate number 7, Senator Eichelberger, and candidate number 8, Dr. Joyce, Dr. John Joyce. So we're going to go straight down through that order. I want to ask you to please refrain from any comments, no signs, no placards, no calling out. The questions, I will decide the length of the question until I begin the response. Until I am completed with that, until they're completed with that, the questions will be 60 seconds. I may change that. They could go to a longer period if I decide at the outset of the question, but I think most of them are going to be 60-second responses. We have a number of questions to get through, and I want to make sure that that we get through enough of the questions. So that's basically the format, and we'll get right to it. All right, let's go to question number 1, and it goes to Ben Hornberger. Did you vote for Donald J. Trump in 2016? If so, why? If not, why not?
Yes, I did. I voted for him both in the primary and the general election. I actually campaigned for him heavily in Bedford, Blair, and Somerset counties, hitting 12,000 doors for him. Being a Marine Corps veteran, he spoke to me on how to defeat enemies, both foreign and abroad. And I mean, he brought a common sense aspect to a lot of issues, and talked about a lot of things that a lot of the candidates didn't talk about, and he still has my support to this day. I hope that he succeeds because he is the President of the United States, and I will gladly support him at all costs.
Okay, thank you. Travis.
Yes, I did vote for Donald Trump. He was, in my opinion, very much a better choice than the Democrat there in the general election. I proudly voted for him too because I did like the "Make America Great Again" slogan. I do believe that for decades now we've been told by our media and by certain academic outlets that we should not be proud of our heritage, we should not be proud of who we are, and the bad things that this country had perhaps been involved in is a stain on our country. But this country does so many good things around the world as well. So philanthropically, we give so much around the world to people in need. And I think there is a lot to be proud of. He inspired a lot of common working people, and I believe he wants to make this country better, and I believe he wants to make the conditions for business and taxes and everything better for people. Thank you.
Colonel.
It breaks my heart that after 30 years of serving on active duty with the United States Army, I was on the cusp of losing my country, and I was giving it to him for sure with my recent retirement, less secure, less prosperous, and less good than how I received it from my father. And so I was one of those waiting up, hoping, but the media told me Hillary Clinton was going to win this country, and I believed at that point we're going to forever lose the United States of America as we do it. My heart was breaking. But on that night, Election Day 2016, I watched Pennsylvania rise up and change the course of history. This nation that changed the course of history during the Battle of Gettysburg and also was a home place and birth of freedom. Once again, we stood in the gap. So I did vote for him. I stand with him. I look back over the last 8 years as an officer and a Christian in the United States Army, and I felt the oppression of political correctness driving me to try to hide my faith, which I didn't do and wanted to do. I saw the morality of the country slip away, the economy collapse, the military breakdown, and our foreign policy fall apart. You see that in Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Israel. It's a new day for America, and I thank God for Donald Trump.
Bernie.
My name is Bernie Washball II. I did vote for President Trump. I'm a real estate developer, as the president is. We basically do the same types of thing. The decimal point and the commas moved a little bit, but essentially we do the same thing. I followed him long before he was President of the United States, back in the 90s, even in the 80s, after I graduated high school. My thing was to start my business. That's what I did, and quite frankly, I would follow a lot of what he did, and there were several things through his books and watching him that helped me in my business. So I have a long bias towards President Trump. I did have an opportunity to meet him in the 1990s. I was actually doing some shopping on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, and I had an opportunity to meet him and shake his hand. We're both businessmen. We have vision and management skills, and that's what I'll bring to Washington, D.C.
Just to interrupt, you may see some cards going up. The yellow card is the candidate has 10 seconds. The red card means they're finished. I'm going to let them finish a sentence or two. I mentioned to them when we discussed this earlier, no paragraphs. They get to finish a sentence or two, which is the proper thing to do. I think we're next to Brent.
Good evening. I did not vote for Donald Trump, and there were several reasons for that. I saw and understood why people wanted him. There was both a heavily anti-Clinton sector of society, and there was also a large sector that said, look, we don't like the way things are in Washington, let's change them. What troubled me greatly is I believe in making decisions based on fact, and frankly, Donald Trump was less acquainted with facts than any candidate I can recall. That is his nature, it's how he does his business. But among those issues we've seen now, he promised to work for everybody, for the little guy, for the working class, and he's already betrayed that. That's why I didn't vote for Donald Trump.
Captain.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Truth be told, I voted for Ted Cruz in the primary, and then of course I voted for Donald Trump in the general. Mr. Trump is going to be a great president, and the reason he's going to be a great president is because he cares about the people. In spite of what people say about him, he cares about America. That's pretty clear. But what a lot of people are concerned about, of course, is his Twitter account and some of his personality quirks, some of which we're just going to have to get used to, I think, because he's doing so many good things. We need to support him. I support him 96% of the way with respect to his policies. He's following through on the things that he said he would do. The problem is the House has not supported him. So we haven't repealed Obamacare. We haven't fixed immigration. We did get a tax cut. Good on the Republican Party for that. But we need people in the House who will support the president and his policies.
Thank you. Senator Eichelberg.
I did vote for President Trump, and I was doing, Dr. Madonna, you might appreciate this, on election night, I was doing some election night coverage on a local radio station in Altoona, WRTA, and we had a long evening, as you can imagine. We were watching what was happening nationally and in Pennsylvania. I was tracking through the Department of State website what was happening all around the state, and I could see Pennsylvania shifting to be a victory for Donald Trump. We could not believe that at first. We saw the sectors like the coal region and the heavy union sectors of Pennsylvania coming in and supporting Trump, county after county after county. And what we realized was that we were going to win this thing. And that was going to that was going to put us over the top of the whole country. So President Trump was going to be our president. And my thought is that people had that vision of hope that he brought to the campaign so that we could make America great again, and he truly believed that and he supported it. Thank you.
Dr. Joyce.
Good evening. Good evening, I'm Dr. John Joyce, and I also voted for President Trump. I can be thankful for President Trump because if it wasn't for an outsider like Donald Trump, I wouldn't be sitting at this table. America embraced an outsider, someone who wasn't a career politician or a chronic campaigner. They looked for someone, a businessman, a leader, a successful man, to come in and represent them. He sat at tables and stood at podiums similar to this with multiple candidates. He stated his case clearly, and on that election night, I did stay up till 2:45 until it was finally announced. My wife went to bed at 10 o'clock and she said, your guy has it in the bag. He's going to win. And I said, oh, no one's predicting that President Trump is going to win Pennsylvania. She said, President Trump has spoken to the American people. He has allowed us. He doesn't think outside the box. He thinks from the business side of the box. I think from the medical side of the box. I have a strong identity with President Trump, and I will work hard to achieve his agenda. Thank you.
All right, I have one other question before we have a number of substantive questions that I want to get to, meaning on policies and issues that are before Congress and before our country. But I do have to ask another question that I think is very important for the folks in this district to know. and this question goes to Travis Schooley first. Why are you running for Congress?
I never endeavored to be in politics until I was in my mid-30s, and it is tied inextricably to my Christian walk. I would not be the man that I am today if I weren't a Christian. That's the first and most important thing in my life. And, you know, I'm a family man. So realizing that we're stewards of all that we have, we need to leave this country a better place than what it was when we inherited it. And we should not take for granted the freedom that we have. This place is a beacon of light in the world. If we live right and we treat one another well, there's no reason why this place can't be even better than it is today. And I believe that we have a bright future. There's a lot of challenges ahead, and I think we can meet those challenges. But I can't look myself in the mirror and not be involved. There's too many issues to work through, and I trust no man like the one in the mirror I see every morning. And it's my responsibility. That's how I see it. Thank you.
Colonel Mastriano, same question.
Wow, so I retired from the Army on 1 November after 30 years of active service and a couple years reserve time early on, and seeing service on the Iron Curtain, Iraq, and then after 9/11, 3 tours Afghanistan. And as I already mentioned, I look back over my 30 years of active service and it broke my heart at the condition of the country. And I'm like, Lord God, help us. Especially as it looked like Hillary Clinton was going to win the election before my retirement. And then God raised up a champion and he gave us a fighter and a hero. Okay, so then Bill Schuster announced his retirement on my birthday, the 2nd of January. And I did not pay much attention to that until people from the region of Franklin and Fulton County rallied around me like, Doug Mastriano, we want you to pray about entering the race because we believe you're a man that can't be bought. And you fought for this country overseas, you'll fight for it here. And so I stepped forward with my wife and prayed, and God put it on our hearts to step forward. You know, as in Queen Esther's time with Israel, we see that Israel is about the Jewish people are about to be destroyed, and Queen Esther rose up for such a time as this. And I think it's such a time as this for me, to not fade away, but to fight for the country to the end.
Bernie Washington.
Bernie Washerball II. This is an evolving thing for me. When I first started thinking about running for Congress, I think my main motivation was the frustration that I saw in Washington, D.C. And quite honestly, particularly with the Republicans in Congress. Now, there's certainly some good people there, and I'm not talking about everyone, but the Republicans said, give us the House, give us the Senate and presidency, and we'll get a few things done. Well, I think the president's trying to make some things happen, and there's some resistance there, and that's frustrating to me. With regard to me personally and why I'm doing this, it was more of a macro thing in the beginning, but as time's going by, the two things that I've been doing since I started this process is getting out there and seeing the people. And the second thing is developing an economic revitalization and economic development plan for the people of my district. So I'm working very diligently on that, and I have some outlines with regard to that I'll get into if I have some time, but I got a red card, so thank you.
Brent, go ahead, Brent.
I'm Brent Ottaway, and I have talked about doing this for 20 years. My wife and I used to have conversations about which one of us would challenge a Schuster. We found it enormously frustrating that we could go to a ballot box and have no choice when voting for a member of Congress, not the local judge of elections or some other minor official. It's time for citizen legislators, the way things were intended to be from the outset. Things have gotten so extreme in Congress that everyone just shouts at each other from the fringes, and no one knows how to work together or is willing to work together. I am someone who, in my professional and my civic duties, have shown an ability to bring people together to good ends. Thank you.
I'm running because I'm on a mission. Many of you know I started in 2013 when I realized that my own Republican Party had betrayed our nation and had personally betrayed me. We had leadership, little L, in Congress including Mr. Boehner, Mr. Schuster, who were not representing me and were lying to me and had frankly betrayed our country. I set about then to replace them. Mr. Boehner was replaced. Mr. Schuster has declared his retirement and will soon be replaced. I trust by myself, and that's why I'm continuing to run, to finish that mission, because we need strong leaders in Washington, D.C. who will do what they say they will do, be men of their word, and will return America to the place that it needs to be in the world. We need a strong legislature in order to help the president, who has already articulated what we need to do, and I support him in that. And so that's why I'm looking for your support. Thank you.
Senator.
When Bud Schuster retired, in the middle of the term, if people remember, there was a conference to select somebody to be the nominee in a special election. And I was involved in that, and I came in second next to Bill Schuster. So it wasn't my time. I was interested in running for Congress at that time. And I was a county commissioner. And eventually, I was asked to run for the state senate. They did that 12 years ago. I had always thought that Washington is the place where we can make the greatest change for our country. It's a very dangerous time for us right now. And as we look at the issues that face America, the divisiveness that's across our country, particularly with the media these days, we need people in Washington that can hit the ground running, make good decisions, and advance the issues for the good of America. And I think it's time that we send the right people there, and we have the right fight for the issues that are important to this area and for all parts of our great country.
Dr. Joyce.
As a doctor, I spent my entire career listening to people, problem solving, making interventions. Now I'm asked to do it at a different level. I'm honored to assume that, to fight for you, to listen to you, and to make good, intelligent decisions based on the constituents of PA 13. That's my strength. That's what I'm trained to do. To listen, to respond, and to act. President Trump's agenda is clear. It has made such significant progress in America. I'm a 100% supporter of making that agenda come to fruition. I think that President Trump's agenda is what America needs to hear. I'm a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, very conservative individual. I'm a common sense conservative. I understand the tax issues. I understand, as a small business owner, what needs to be done. And I will work hard to listen to you, to take those actions, and to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben.
Quite simply, to put service first above all else. Put service and country above political party. There are Democrats and Republicans both, especially shamefully the Republicans that attack President Trump on a day-to-day basis, the media, lobbyists and consultant groups. At 13 years old, I joined a volunteer fire company. Now, while I couldn't run calls, I did a lot of fundraisers to help keep them open. I'm now a life member with them. Served my country at 18 years old, joined the Marine Corps, following my father and my grandfather's footsteps. They both served in the Army. And so it's just about service to community and country, putting those first. And I'm more than willing to give up everything that I have. I know I'm young, I'm inexperienced when it comes to politics, and I'm not always the most polished speaker, but I'm willing to give up everything that I have in the life and the job that I have to represent you equally and fairly.
Thank you. All right, the third question goes to Colonel Mastriano. I want to go to two really important national subjects. There's lots of domestic ones I want to get to. We have plenty of time. As I think you know and everyone in the audience knows, this past week, President Trump, along with Great Britain and France, two of our important allies, launched more than 100 missiles into Syria. They took down chemical weapon production and development factories, I'll call them, outlets. And there's been a debate about that. Some conservatives, in fact, have said it didn't go far enough. Some liberals have said it shouldn't have done it at all. So if you had been in the Congress of the United States, what would you have told the President of the United States if he had come to you, this goes to every one of you, and said, Colonel, this is what I want to do?
So this was as a response to a chemical attack by Assad, another one on his own people, east of Damascus in Duma. And this is on the heels of, about the same time last year, a similar chemical attack against a rebel stronghold, mostly women and children. Despite what Russia today will say, the propaganda out of Moscow, Assad did it with the support of the Russian Air Force. And so the bottom line is, okay, what's the so what? Remember in 2013, we had a glorious red line from President Obama. Assad, I really mean this, if you use chemical weapons, we're gonna hit you hard. And Assad did. He threatened us. Go ahead and try to do something. We did nothing. We dithered, we daydreamed, and we heard more speeches on why he changed his mind. And this is a fallout of having a weak, feckless president leading our nation. We're still on cleanup here. There was a Christian genocide also going on at the same time in Iraq that we turned the other eye. In fact, the administration said that war wasn't going on. So that the response we saw from President Trump was justified, warranted, and measured. It was designed to reduce the chemical capabilities in the hands of Assad. Well done.
Bernie Washington II. You know, based on the information that I have available to me, of course I'm not privy to intelligence briefings, I support the president. I think my only comment would have been, I would have done it a lot sooner than he did. My position on it would have been, you guys did this before, if you do it again, here's what's going to happen, and it would have happened a lot sooner. But to answer the question, I support the actions of the president in this case. There's a lot of issues, a lot of things like that going on around the world, and people say we can't be the policemen of the world. But these types of things that governments do on their own people, innocent people, are inexcusable. And as a superpower in this world, we have to take action on that.
Hi, I'm Brent. It's a difficult question to answer, lacking so many of the details of it, knowing only from media accounts what went on. My inclination is to say that action was necessary, but I would note that Assad was killing his own people long before this particular chemical weapons attack. And regardless how you are killed by your nation's leader, it feels much the same in the end. I think that we need to work internationally and diplomatically to deal with such situations so that they don't come to this state. Thank you.
Captain Cuddy.
Yeah, I don't think it's a difficult question to answer at all. This was in our national interest. There was no question we had to do this, and President Trump exercised international leadership to put a coalition together. It takes a few days to do that, to get the planning right. As we can see by the flawless execution of the mission, it took just the right amount of time and made just the right decisions to execute this. This was a war crime, and I feel like it didn't go far enough because we have to eliminate the chemical weapons capabilities of this nation that President Obama had certified had already been resolved, and they didn't have any. Well, obviously they do have some, and I think that we need to be considering actually establishing a no-fly zone. Russia and Iran are taking over this dysfunctional state called Syria. It needs to be reapportioned. It's no longer a functioning nation. The Civil War is not something we want to get involved in, but we have to stop this international war crimes from happening, such as with this chemical attack.
I support the action, and it's clearly unacceptable to engage in chemical warfare. But in addition to that, I think the president is cautious in speaking about it, but I think the president has intelligence that says that there's a coalition being developed by Russia that includes Syria and Iran, and it's a very dangerous coalition that will be an axis of evil in that part of the world that he is keeping in check by this military action. He's not only taking out some of the resources for the chemical warfare, but he's also helping to stop the construction of this new coalition. We can't afford to, as we've done for 8 years, to sit back and allow evil nations around our world coalesce and work against us and gain strength and power. And that's what's happened in this case. So he took swift action, and I think he'll be ready. If anything else is done, we'll go back and we'll hit them again. Dr. Joyce.
The crisis, the chemical bombing of children, their own citizens in Syria, was atrocious. For Assad to unleash these chemical weapons on his own people is clearly unacceptable. Our response was clear-cut and almost surgical in its approach. We needed to let not only Syria know, but Russia and Iran, that we were prepared at this point, because of these actions against their own civilians, to let the world hear our message. And the world has heard our message. We have put Russia, Iran, and Syria on alert that this isn't going to be tolerated, that we have a responsibility as human beings to protect people. I support President Trump's actions clearly. I think that this is actually going to allow for more diplomatic relations to occur, because they're on alert. They know that they crossed the line. President Trump wasn't going to tolerate this. We as Americans cannot tolerate this. It's time to make that message clear, and he did that. Thank you.
So I agree with the strike, and most importantly, I agree with President Trump and what he said about it, that this was not about regime change, that it was about, the red line in the sand being drawn, and when you step over that red line, you get smacked back behind the red line. That's the way our military is supposed to be. And I agree with Trump 100% that we do not need to go in and change regimes. We do not need to get involved in another war. We've been in Afghanistan and Iraq since 2002. We cannot afford, we spent $5 trillion. He hid it in the campaign trail, and it was a big issue. We spent $5 trillion in Afghanistan and Iraq, rebuilding them for what? What have we got out of it? We do not need to change the regime there. We need to make it very clear, though, that if they overstep certain boundaries, that we will protect their people rather than their regime.
Travis.
Well, the attack was definitely unconscionable, and no matter how the government uses tools to kill people, it's all bad. But the chemical weapons, of course, really pull on people's heart. Regardless of who did the attack, I mean, we do these things sometimes. At least the American public, we don't exactly know for sure what exactly happened. But irregardless of what happened there, it makes sense to take that capability away. So, and that strike was appeared to be very precise, and I think we've done that in the past. Barack Obama did that in 2013, and that was at the time when ISIS was there, and we had the genocide going on. But the president we had before, he didn't do a very good job. So that's creating a lot more of an issue that we need to resolve. And this latest action here was very precise, and I was talking about it the other day. A friend was over, and he said he'd read in the Associated Press that on Wednesday that they had ordered people to leave the airports, and I knew exactly. I told him, I said, we're going to hit that place. So as long as we do these things precisely and efficiently and take that capability out, it's very good.
All right, we're down to question number 4 to Bernie Washington II. All right, President Trump has made the border wall between the United States and Mexico a top priority. I think everybody, the audience, and I think everybody understands that, especially in exchange for continuing DACA. He also has some other objectives in his immigration plan. Do you agree or disagree with the president?
Bernie Washington II. If we don't have a border, we don't have a country. And I'm in strong support of any efforts to secure our border. We do need legal immigration, especially if we start growing our economy. We're going to need people here, and I'm not in opposition to that. The president talks about the wall. I don't always believe that it's a physical wall that he's referring to, but in essence, what he's talking about is strong borders. And I'm in full support of that.
Right, go ahead. Why don't we just pick up and I'll keep track if it goes straight down the line instead of having me repeat the things in front of it. It'll go quicker. We'll get more questions in.
Hi, I'm Brent. I am not in support of the wall itself. I gave it some consideration back when Mexico was paying for it, but now that it's on us, I've reconsidered my position. We do, of course, need laws controlling people who come into our country, but we don't need to alienate much of the world in doing so. And I feel that the general tenor of Donald Trump's approach to immigration has been, as with other policies, pulling back, becoming nationalistic, pulling away from the rest of the world in a time where global economies, global flow of information to people is more important than ever.
Here's the phrase you need to remember. Secure the border and enforce existing law. Secure the border and enforce existing law. Whether it's a wall, whether it's electronic countermeasures, whether it's troops on the border, you need to secure the border. It's become so politicized now that immigration and the border have become just issues we talk about and we don't do anything about. Our own Congress will not fully fund securing the border. We have human traffickers, we have drugs, we have terrorists coming across that porous border. As a senior military officer in the United States Coast Guard after 9/11, I was in a position to rewrite the nation's maritime security policy. It can be done. If it's not politicized, it's actually fairly easy to do. I did it. And so we have to do the same thing on the land border, and it can be done. A multi-layered defense that allows us to maintain domain awareness, to know who's coming, and be able to pick them up. We shouldn't be catching and releasing. We need to be sending them back and deporting those illegal aliens.
Our immigration policy has lapsed into a chronic problem for us over the last number of years. We have policies, we have illegal immigrants, and I don't know why we're afraid to use the term illegal immigrants because people are offended by that. It means something. We have people coming across our borders that aren't permitted to be here, that haven't gone through the process. We have people that come through the process, and it's unfair to them to allow others to come through without going through the steps that are needed to become a United States citizen, or work here legally, or be educated here legally for a period of time. We need a little bit of workforce, but we don't have we don't get the bang for that as we do the expense on the other side of the ledger. These folks that come over by and large are very costly to our country. Their medical costs are very high. They bring disease with them. They bring a lot of crime. They bring drugs. There's human trafficking. It's a significant problem for our country, and it's something that's a departure from the history of immigration in this country, so we need to get that back in check.
Our border security is paramount for the success of our country. We must resolve that President Trump's agenda is achieved. As we've campaigned, I've been here in Bedford County. I visited the orchards. I visited the dairy farms. I've seen immigrants at work. Immigrants who go through legal channels. The legal channels must be maintained and enforced, because the illegal channels, the people who years ago would just filter through the borders like a sieve, now it's a funnel. They come in here and they bring drugs, and I've seen this in Bedford County, I've seen this in Blair County, and in all 10 counties. The drugs have come through in mass quantities, and I'll speak specifically to Bedford County from experiences that I've had as we've campaigned. We know that they come in from Baltimore, they come in from Philadelphia, and they get on the turnpike and end up here with an insecure border, with the inability to stop that. Those problems end up wonderful families, in wonderful homes, in wonderful communities. And we're paying the cost of that. We're paying the cost of having a border that is not secure. I pledge to you that will be one of my main priorities in Congress. Thank you.
So not only do we need to secure the border, I believe in building the border wall. I believe that a one-time cost negates yearly costs that we accrue from illegal immigration. I come from a long line of Italian immigrants. My great-grandfather was an Italian immigrant, and he did it the right way. If he could do it, so can they. But also not only secure the border with the wall, possible National Guard troops and whatever means necessary, but also end chain migration. That program needs to end. The visa lottery program, that needs to end. We saw recently with the, I believe it was last year, at the end of last year, the terrorist attack committed in New York by somebody who came here on the visa lottery program. We don't need it. We don't need chain migration. If you want to come here, take the citizenship test, become a citizen, be proud and earn it. I was in the Marine Corps, and everything is earned, not given. Our immigration system should be the same way. You earn it, and you earn your keep. You don't get just be given it.
Yeah, I think this immigration crisis, first and foremost, has been caused by our federal government. They've been kicking the can down the road for so long that now it's a crisis, and it's a bad crisis. The other thing is the immigration process in the United States takes too long, it's too expensive. I knew an Englishman, he was a mechanical engineer, civil engineer, wasn't a criminal or anything. It took 11 years to try and become a citizen of the United States. He's now a citizen of Chile. He's a good man, and we couldn't process him effectively. So the federal government seems not to be able to do anything effectively. We absolutely need border security. It's sensible that we have an immigration policy that makes sense and works for Americans. Castle is only as weak as its strongest wall. And a nation without borders, we're asking for trouble. I have a friend who used to be in the military with me, he served in Bosnia, and that whole area there was a pipeline for human trafficking, drugs, and everything else you can imagine. And that's the same thing we have going on down here at our border right now. We need to take control of that place, and we need to set up border security. So,
Doug Mastriano. I call it law, wall, and order. We need to enforce the laws. We need to have a wall to have a border, and also to bring order and restoration to the country. Illegal immigration is a drag on the United States. We don't even know how many, of course you wouldn't know how many we have. The estimates are as high as 30 million people. This brings us sex trafficking, drugs, crime, gangs, the MS-13 group from El Salvador. Remember Kate Steinle in San Francisco? That should never happen to an American citizen. It's a duty of the Congress and the President of the United States. They take an oath to defend our country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we've dropped the ball at the political level in this country. And it's often led by do nothing, no more flood Republicans in Washington, D.C. It's time for a change. Pennsylvania last year spent $1.4 billion on illegal immigrants, giving them health care and benefits. Pennsylvania citizens going to a health care clinic and walk away with generic drugs while the illegals come away with the high quality things. We have a problem, Houston. We need to change this. $89 billion spent across the nation on the illegal immigration. I think it's time to take care of our people first, take care of our roads, no more veterans sleeping on the streets, and then all these illegals get in line behind us. You know, I worked in Warsaw during 2003, and there was hundreds of Poles waiting in line to come to the country, and they should not be cut in front of the line by illegals. It's time for a change.
Thank you. All right, you get the question number 5. Let's go to some domestic policies for a moment. As you know, since the horrific shooting in Parkland in South Florida, both the Congress and the state legislature have been involved in a huge debate over the nature of gun control, to put it mildly. And a lot of folks believe in the Second Amendment. Let's put it this way. How do you balance the Second Amendment when you have folks who can obtain guns who have mental health issues? Should there be extended universal background checks? In general, what is your position on gun control? What kinds of gun control would you support? And obviously in the context of the Second Amendment.
Thank you. I'm Brent, and I am the Democrat, but I am also a a proponent of the Second Amendment. I believe in gun ownership. I come from a hunting family. Indeed, if I had hit that rabbit when I was 12, I might still be a hunter myself. We need to do things, though, to make them safer. Just like every other issue, there's a continuum from banning weapons altogether to allowing anything that you want. And we need to move that away from where the lobbyists have placed it. And I think most Americans recognize the need for common sense measures, universal background checks, ending the trade show loophole, looking seriously at reducing the use of weapons of war and making those available. So there's much that can be done while still respecting the right to bear arms.
If guns were the problem, Switzerland would have mass shootings every day. Virtually every citizen there carries a weapon. Guns are not the problem. We have enough gun laws. What we have, in fact, is a failure of the bureaucracy even to enter the data that would have stopped at least 2 of the mass shootings that I can think of. We point to the fact that our bureaucracy is so big and unwieldy, it's not even able to enforce the laws we have. More laws are not the answer. I'm a lifetime NRA member, and I support the Second Amendment to the death. It's our way of defending ourselves, also preventing tyranny in our nation. That's well understood and it needs to be defended. And the creeping, slippery slope of more gun laws is not going to stop the Parkland shooting. The culture is rotten. The issue is fatherless children. The issue is a culture that's thrown God out of schools. The issue is a culture that needs to be redeemed.
Don't you hate it when people start up an answer when they say, when I was a kid? But when I was a kid, and we were in high school, people took their guns to school. People had guns in their cars, in their trucks. They went hunting after school. Sometimes people would take guns to school, in the school, for show and tell. We didn't have shootings then, like we have now. The culture has changed. I held the first hearing in the legislature in Pennsylvania after the Parkland shooting in Florida because I chair the Education Committee. There are many, many factors involved with school security, the least of which is worrying about whether we have bump stocks on guns and some of the questions that have been posed about how old you can be to own a long rifle. These aren't things that are going to pertain to almost any situation that will come up in this country. We don't want to get into a slippery slope of looking at mental health issues, keeping people away from getting care. There's a lot of issues that we can get trapped into acting on if we go down that path of gun control. We've got to look at common sense things that will work in the schools on an everyday basis. And that's the direction that we need to go in Pennsylvania.
As a life member of the NRA, I understand, I understand and I respect the Second Amendment must remain intact. I will ultimately respect that and report to you if there are any changes in any way that anyone would suggest. School violence, the use of guns in schools, we're all aware of that. We saw the horrific actions in Florida. But realize, in the state of Pennsylvania, students who are in school have to, as mandated by the state government, have to have a fire drill once a month. 9 months of school, 9 fire drills. We have no training, we have no protection for the precious cargo that we send to schools, that we entrust in the teachers. We have to develop plans, and the federal government has to support that. More than a box of rocks, we need to teach our children, our teachers, and our administrators that our children are precious. We have to be able to address these issues. We have to guard the entrances and the exits to our school. You can't get on an airplane, you can't go to a professional game without going through 2 levels of security. And yet, I can show up at a school and walk in, pretty much untouched, unscathed. The Second Amendment is not the issue. The issue is we must protect our children. I would fight for our Second Amendment rights. Thank you.
When it comes to the Second Amendment, I'm not a life member of the NRA. I'm only 24 years old, but I do fully support the NRA on gun ownership. And, you know, I like when people say, well, I support gun ownership because I'm a hunter. Well, it's more than just hunting. I was in the Marine Corps. I swore an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. The Pennsylvania State Constitution states that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be questioned. This federal Constitution says the right to keep and bear arms, you know, you have the right to keep and bear arms and to form a militia. The point of the Second Amendment is so that we, the people, can overthrow a tyrannical government if it ever comes down to it. It is our last line of defense against a corrupt dictatorship in our country. And that's why the Founding Fathers wrote it in there, because they had to do that. And they wanted to make sure that we had the right to do that at some later point in time. But we do need to have a discussion about gun ownership and mental health issues. But we need to be very careful with veterans and PTSD, because there are certain levels of PTSD that shouldn't be questioned. Thank you.
The framers of this country were very clear. The purpose of the Second Amendment was not only for food, it was for personal defense. It was a guarantor of the rest of our rights and a bare bones element of national security. We would have never whipped the British if we didn't have muskets. The last century, many millions of people were killed by their own government. More people were killed in the last century than have ever lived on the planet before that point. I think it's imperative that if we are living in a free country, that the people have a means to defend themselves, not only from criminals, but also from the possibility of a foreign invasion or the possibility of a tyrannical government at some point in the future. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. When cops shoot people, we blame the cops. When anybody else shoots people, we blame the guns. We have to look at this thing straightforward and start talking the same language. It took a man with an AR-15 in Texas to stop a man with an AR-15. You know, this problem is multifold. We have prescription drugs that cause all sorts of ill thoughts. We have fatherless homes. We've taken God out of our schools, and our culture is changing and our youth is changing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Mastriano. The Second Amendment codifies our God-given rights to keep and bear arms. It's appalling to me anytime there's a shooting, the left will jump on that as a way to advance an agenda to remove our right to bear arms. What other right will they suspend? We saw a similar approach as a historian with a doctorate in history. We saw Lenin do the same thing in Russia. We saw Hitler do the same thing in Germany in the 30s. Where does it stop? Where did the tyrants stop infringing upon our rights? Nobody asked when prayer was taken out of schools, maybe this is going to change things. Nobody said, hey, maybe it's a good idea to keep the 10 Commandments on the wall, because God forbid the kids abide by the commandment, thou shalt not kill. We've lost our way as a nation, so it's a heart problem, it's not a gun problem. Whose great idea was it to declare a gun-free zone of schools? The schools should be fortified and strengthened. We didn't declare gun-free zones in airports when the Palestinian Liberation Organization attacked American and European airports in the 70s. No, we strengthened them. And it's time for some radical action here and change that advances so we stop the madness and get the talk off the table that it's about guns. It's about a heart, a moral collapse of our country.
Go ahead.
Bernie Washball II. It's hard to be the last guy answering questions because everybody else takes all my good points. But I'm a very strong proponent of the Second Amendment, of course, and the Constitution. The Second Amendment is the amendment that has the teeth. As soon as we give up on that one, all the rest of them are going to fall also. So obviously, and I think all of us are definitely strong Second Amendment people. I do have a concealed carry permit, and I have a few firearms. I'm not a big hunter. We have plenty of laws on the books to control certain types of weapons, automatic weapons and such. All we need to do is enforce those laws. I guess that's it. Thank you.
All right, next question goes to Captain Halverson. All right. As you know, during the course of the 2016 campaign, President Trump made it very clear that he thought many of the trade deals that the United States had entered into over the years were unfair. This is then candidate Trump saying, particularly the Trans-Pacific Partnership and NAFTA. When he got after he took the oath of office, he took us out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We're now negotiating NAFTA. As you also know, he recently announced tariff hikes on steel and aluminum. Overall, do you generally support what the president did with trade? I'm going to have a follow-up for everybody on that, but let's just stick to the trade deals, fair, unfair, particularly he aimed at it, the so-called Rust Belt states in particular, of which Pennsylvania is one.
I understand the question. I believe I'm the only candidate at the dais here that supported, and I came out immediately, supported President Trump's strong message, which was a signal to China. Make no doubt, steel and aluminum tariffs were a signal to China that there's a new sheriff in town. We're no longer allowing you to say one thing and do another. We're no longer going to allow you to steal our technology and make unfair rules and dump cheap steel due to the subsidization of transportation, subsidizing labor, subsidizing all aspects of their production of steel. China has a $350 billion deficit. We have a $350 billion deficit with China, which supports their military, fully funds the Chinese military with our trade deficit. We need to bring an end to that, and the tariff was a strong signal to China that we're no longer going to operate by those rules. The TPP, we want bilateral trade agreements that are fair. Free trade is a misnomer. We need fair free trade.
Get back to a gun analogy. President Trump often uses a shotgun approach to his policies, and then he narrows it down to a sniper rifle. And he came out with the tariff announcement, and then he started to make exceptions to the tariff announcement. I'm not a big tariff supporter. Tariffs are taxes. They come back ultimately to tax the people in this country. They retaliate against us. They have other agreements with other nations, and it impacts what they do with them. Then they impact what they do with other countries, which circulates back to the United States. So we have a lot of issues with the tariff announcement by the president. But it is much narrower now, and it is focused on China. China has a lot of problems. The biggest one is that they're stealing our intellectual property. And we have to be very, very concerned about that because they're taking it in an alarming rate. There's other ways we can deal with China as well, and I think maybe we'll talk about that later, but we've got to make very certain that we're not allowing China to abuse the relationship with this country.
Dr. John Joyce, I am a firm advocate of the tariffs. I think President Trump has the insight as a businessman to realize what China has done. China not only has stolen intellectual property, but they've manipulated the currency, and they've manipulated the market. It's not a fair, it's not an even playing field. They've tilted it. He realizes that's going on. He's made very concise tariffs against aluminum and against the imported steel. It's a big part of Pennsylvania. We realize how that can impact our country. It's put them on alert. His ability to understand this from a business point of view and to address it with tariffs is something that I endorse. Thank you.
When it comes to the tariffs, I fully support them. I fully support President Trump on his actions. He knows what he's doing. He's always been 10 steps ahead of everybody else. He's always been, every time it seems like everybody's, oh, well, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's off his rocker, he's crazy, he's nuts, and then turns around and ends up working the best possible deal out of nothing. China blinked, and who did agree with the tariffs the most were the union presidents out in western Pennsylvania. They all, commended President Trump, and probably 99.99% of them did not vote and or actively campaign or endorse Trump during the election. There's plenty of documentaries out there that the unions overwhelmingly supported Not the union workers, but the union bosses overwhelmingly supported Hillary Clinton. And yet they absolutely commended him and said, this is fantastic, this is helping our business, because it's for the working people. And I'm 100% for the working people.
I'm for free and reciprocal trade. Trading with other countries is a big thing. But our politicians many, many years ago have been making bad deals for Americans. It doesn't take much. It's common sense to drive down our routes and see buildings that once stood to produce something, rusty factories falling apart. We know we don't have the jobs we had. We know we don't have the standard of living we had for many families. And we got to take care of Americans. That's why you elect us, to take care of you, not other countries. For China demands to have 50+% ownership in companies locating overseas, and then they steal our technology. I was an intelligence analyst in the United States Army sergeant, and we were watching China for one country. They had a staggering increase in technology, military technology, training, and they've been stealing our stuff for a long time. We should treat other people how they treat us, and I think that's a pretty simple policy. Abide by the Christian golden rule precept that you treat others how you would like to be treated. So the tariffs, I think, are attracting good people to the table, and it's worked so far. So we'll see. In fact, tariffs aren't always effective, but in some cases they are.
Doug Mastriano, the trade deficit with China last year, according to the World Trade Organization, was $375 billion to China's benefit. What does that mean? What's the so what for the 13th district? Loss of jobs, hopelessness, homelessness, emptiness, can't provide for your families. What do you do? China slaps a 10% tariff on our agricultural goods going over to them. It's 9.9%. That's 3 times higher what we put on their commodities coming here. China does 5% on all other goods. That's twice as high. This is why we have the cheap goods coming into Walmart. China wins, it's a win-win. I agree with the president. Why are we having these dumb deals? That was nice during the Nixon administration when we needed China to counterbalance the Soviet Union. The Cold War is over. It's time to negotiate some deals that benefit the American people. Some people on the campaign trail were concerned about a trade war, especially some of the farmers. And I said, China's going to blink. They have far more to lose than we do with that trade deficit, and indeed they did. The president's playing it well. But that's just the beginning. There's many other countries that have these huge advantages as far as trade deficit goes. So it's time for us to really back this America First policy, because it is working. And we're going to see the tide change and bring jobs back to our district.
Bernie Washball II. The United States is the market. We control the market. Free trade is free trade. We don't have that around the world. Other countries apply these taxes and tariffs, and we have to do the same thing to keep it even. I'm a businessman. I understand what the president's doing. It'd be the same as if you would sell your home. You don't start out low and expect to get the price that you want. You start out high. So these tactics that he's using from a business perspective are negotiating tactics. And once they're put into effect, and I think this is a little bit different possibly than maybe previous administrations, I think the president will monitor these things. And if he sees them going in the wrong direction, I know he'll make adjustments to them. So I'm in support of that.
I'm Brent. There's no question that China does not play fair, and matters such as the intellectual property theft, manipulating currency, and so on, need to be dealt with. Tariffs are a blunt instrument to use in such a situation, and they are taxes that ultimately are taxes on our own people. And in China's retaliation, they hit agriculture, for example. And so when you resort to blunt instruments, you are somewhat limited in what you can accomplish. So I would rather have seen other approaches. It's a complicated world. We have 10 times as many people working with steel as we do creating steel.
All right, Next question goes to Senator Eichelberger. As I think all of you on the panel know, agriculture is the leading industry in Bedford and in fact in the entire district, not just relating to the tariffs and trade and what that means for the farm community, but there's immigration, there's the farm bill. If you're elected to Congress representing the 13th district, talk a little bit about, and I want obviously all of you to do it, talk a little bit about your farm policies and your advocacy for issues that benefit the farmers of the 13th Congressional District.
Yeah, you touched on how complicated the agriculture industry is today, and all those issues globally affect our farmers. We're used to seeing farms in our area. They've been here forever. They're our neighbors. They're our friends. But they're involved in a business that is very volatile. Everybody knows the dairy industry right now is in a very long cycle of having low pricing. Dairy pricing, we had a farmer in Huntington County, fifth generation, give up his dairy herd a few weeks ago. I met with a lot of students last week in a student program I had with agriculture, and that was the number one question I had. You know, what can we do with dairy farming? Of course, a lot of these issues depend on where you are in government. The state has some authority to work on some things, like the milk pricing, milk marketing board in Pennsylvania. There's some things that we can do. Federally, the biggest thing that would help the dairy farmers today is defining clearly that animal milk should be labeled properly in the stores, that we don't allow soy milk, almond milk, things like that, to use the word milk on their label because it is not milk from an animal. And that would be something that could definitely help our dairy farmers today in Pennsylvania.
Dr. John Joyce, I visited dairy farms, family dairy farms in Bedford County. I've listened to the farmers tell me that the price per hundred has gone down since 2014, $6, $8. One farmer said to me, every time I go to the barns, I lose money. There are many factors that have weighed into this. And I'll start on a national level. When the former First Lady put skim milk into schools, only skim milk, we have a whole generation of children who don't drink milk. The comment that it tastes like chalky water, that came from one of the farmers, and I like it a lot. One of the farmers here in Bedford County is very true. We're missing the generation of children who need it for brain development, for bone development, and yet there's soda, and there's water, and there's everything else. But dairy products are ignored in the school menus. That has to be reinstituted. That has to be from a national level. We can't have people saying our children should be drinking skim milk. It's a simple problem, but it's something that definitely needs to be addressed as well. The dairy farmers need the support of the federal government. We're going to see traditions lost because we're not able to support them.
So I went campaigning in Orrstown, a little town outside of Shippensburg, where I live. Yesterday, 2 people wanted to register to vote. One of them was a part-time dairy farmer for a dairy farm that I pass on Route 11 on the way to Chambersburg all the time. And we started talking about taxes. One of the biggest things is the inheritance tax. I fully support repealing it. Getting rid of any tax on any farmer that wants to pass off his farm or his land onto his next generation, to his kids and everything like that. Sometimes the families, it's too much of a burden for them. They sell the farm so that they can pay the taxes, and they lose that. And it shuts down a lot of farmers in our area. I live in Shippensburg. I wake up every morning with the fresh smell of fertilizer. The past couple of days with the 80-degree weather, it was extremely pungent. And quite honestly, I'm originally from Blair County. We don't have that many farms in Bellwood, but I've gotten used to it and I've grown to appreciate it because that's where food comes from. If there's no farms, there's no food. And I fully support the farmers in any way and listening to their concerns.
I've been visiting a lot of farmers. I went to James Buchanan High School. I was surrounded by farms, so I've been in school with a lot of farm boys, the majority of them dairy farmers, and I know a lot of them, and I've been keeping in contact. The problem they're facing is multifold. Partly the transportation. Some of the co-ops are not treating the farmers very well. They're taking the milk off the farm, they're taking it to another state to process, they're bringing it back into the state as a final product and avoiding milk tax. That milk board, the milk tax is supposed to go to protect ordinary farmers, and these farmers are experiencing higher transportation costs, and they're absorbing that cost, but it's taking a bite out of the milk check. Coming down off the highs of 2014, we've had a prolonged period of low prices, and a lot of farmers are feeling it. I think we need to reverse Michelle Obama's policy and put regular, ordinary milk back into schools and take away this fat-free 2%. The brain is mostly fat. Our kids need fat. They need fat in the brain. And food production should not be centralized in the hands of too few. It should be decentralized. I think it's imperative for food security in the nation so that we can feed people here and in the world.
Doug Mastriano. This is near and close to my heart. My wife's grandfather lost his farm due to regulations and land grabs by the federal government. They turned their 160-year-old farm into a recreation area. All kinds of promises. It ruined 2 families, destroyed a 160-year-old farm, and there's a lot of other people that suffer that situation there. It's time to stop the overreach and land grabs of the federal government. I'm tired of the talk. It's time for actions. I'm heartened by President Trump's rollback of regulations, rollback 2 for everyone. He's done better than that. One farmer told us on the campaign trail, if things don't change soon, there'll be a lot of empty farms in Pennsylvania. For some, it's too late. And for others, it's getting close. It's time for action. I will start with attacking the Environmental Protection Agency and Department of Agriculture and rolling back their crushing regulations, rules, and limiting the ability of faceless bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. from giving mandates they have no idea the ramifications of. The Clean Waters Act is a great idea, but now it's being exploited underneath the guise of the Great Waters Coalition who want to go after your runoff land. What about if you have 6 inches of water on your land? Suddenly that's a wetland, you can't use that. So it's time to stop the madness, it's time to stop the bureaucrats, and to give the power back to the people where it was intended to be.
Thank you.
Bernie Washball II. Of course, farming's a business. I'm a businessman. And the way we do things in the business world is we try to understand the issues of that business before we comment or make decisions about it. I've been a politician, sort of a bad word, I guess, but maybe not, for about 2 months. So this is an issue. I have been on some farms in our district, and I've talked to those folks, particularly dairy farms, and it's an issue that I don't completely understand yet, but I can tell you that I'm a fast learner, and as soon as I understand it, I'll be doing what I can to support the farming community in our district.
I'm Brent. I also believe that steps need to be taken to help the family farm and small farmers. I think, though, we need to look again at some of the subsidies that are provided to the huge agri-corporate businesses that don't need those funds, and they could be redirected to smaller farms, family farms, where they can keep that method of farming and that part of our culture alive and vibrant.
Art Halverson, I'm a Century Farm family member. I live on a farm here in Bedford County. Very familiar with the problem that's going on here with respect to the family farm and the dairy farms in central Pennsylvania. We don't need more federal help. We need the feds to get out of and off of the farm. The EPA is coming on with untrained people and clipboards, adding costs, rolling up regulations. If income is down, as it currently is for the time being, it's a market, it will come back. But increasing costs at a time like this is not the right answer, and that's what the federal government does. Neither is subsidies, because it manipulates the market such that the market can't operate properly. The hard truth is, though, that we need to be looking at diversifying our farms. We need to be looking at alternatives, building orchards, going to feeder cattle, agribusiness, tourism. There are other things that agricultural land can be used for that farmers would be better off moving forward to this new world where demand is actually down for milk.
I'm sorry? Oh, you asked that question? I thought that, did I get confused there? I thought Dr. Joyce asked the question. No? All right. What can I tell you? I get confused here. All right, let's go to the next question. It has to do with what's obviously an issue that Democrats and Republicans agree on. I know that's not always easy to find. And that is the seriousness of opioid addiction and the loss of lives. In 2017 in this state, the numbers were astronomical. And Democrats and Republicans agree it's not just a question of money, but it's a question of what? It's a question of what policies, what programs should be introduced to help combat that. So take it away.
Dr. John Joyce again. You don't have to be a doctor to know that the opioid crisis is horrific in South Central Pennsylvania. I'll speak to our area. With the influx of illegal drugs, we've seen good families have children, have parents who have become addicted to drugs. As a doctor, I know that the rehab centers don't solve the problems. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, fighting with insurance companies, and the relapse rates are high. Recently, Kellyanne Conway talked about a program in East Liverpool, Ohio. Many of you have probably read about that, which is a faith-based rehabilitation center. This is where they team up recovering addicts with addicts and ask them to embrace God. Ask them to realize that their families, the rehab centers, they haven't solved their problems. There are answers, and we have to examine what answers are out there. And to answer your question clearly, there are answers that we as representatives of you in the federal government can continue to evaluate and open the doors specifically to faith-based rehabilitation. Thank you.
I also believe in the faith-based rehabilitation, but there was a program in California that I saw where they were able to extract the THC out of marijuana so that you wouldn't get the high effect from it, but you would still get the pain relief of medicinal marijuana. Being part of the younger generation, I believe that medicinal marijuana needs to be allowed, at very least for the military veterans with PTSD. We have a lot of people coming back from overseas with PTSD from Iraq and Afghanistan because they're fighting the same war. They're watching their buddies blow up on IEDs, watching them scream in agonizing pain with their legs and limbs blown off. And they come back all messed up mentally, and they lose their mind. The doctors and the government, big pharma's solution is, just give them some Vicodin, give them some oxycodone. Instead, give them medicinal marijuana with the THC removed so that they're not getting the high effect, but it calms them down. And it's been proven it's not an addictive substance. With proper regulation and taxation, we'd be able to support that. Move on for help future generations and help cut back on the opioid crisis.
Travis, go ahead.
Yeah, we've got this place because we've had an ability to stop the heroin from coming into this country, and it used to be confined to the cities, and now it's in the rural places. I think part of it is, according to people that I know, district attorneys, that part of this problem stems from people who are looking for pain relief. Originally, they start out on an opioid-based drug, and then they move to this stuff because it's cheaper, and they consequently get addicted. And there's a lot of people that are upset that we're giving out Narcan, or we're not giving out EpiPens, or we're not giving out medicines for people with diabetes. In some form or other, people who have these addictions do cause their own problems, and cause their own problems for the family as well. But our hearts do go out for these people because it hits families of all demographics. So, I think that we should allow, if we're going to have programs to fund organizations to treat people, I think we should allow faith-based organizations to also participate in the program, because I think God can be a much more powerful, transformative power in people's lives than the government.
Doug Mastriano. the opioid crisis here is a symptom of a greater sickness in America. We've lost our way as a country. We've been told there's no room or place for God in the government, in the schools, in the public sector. Christians, you better sit in the corner there in color. We'll tell you to come out and be ashamed of your faith there. Don't talk about it. God help you if you do. It's time to restore American values, point us back to where the greatness came from. And the greatness was clear to our founding fathers. It came from God, from whom we get these same rights that we're talking about today. It's from God the Father. This Judeo-Christian ethic has built this great country and is a foundation of morality. And because of our neglect of those values and kicking them out of the public sector, we've lost our way. How am I going to deal with this from a practical perspective as a leader, as your representative in Washington, D.C.? First off, severe penalties for producers and dealers. We have to show there's no benefit or profit to making drugs or dealing them out. I want to provide also as well help for those who want to help to get off the drugs. Some people get caught in the cycle and want freedom and they're stuck in it. God help us. So let's provide subsidies for the good Christian ministries that reach out to the people. And in the end, I think together, we can make this country great again.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Bernie Washball II. Of course, the opioid problem is a big issue. It's one that I'm still learning about. Prevention and education, I think, are an important component of this. We need to spend some money and some time educating people prior to getting involved in these things. And another aspect of it, I think, is that, and this sort of goes to where I am as a businessman, I think a strong economy and good jobs in our communities and in our district could be important to the prevention or to stopping people from getting involved in the beginning. And then the same as everyone else, I believe once individuals are involved in that, as others have mentioned, I think the faith-based rehabilitation is probably the way that we need to move.
Thank you.
I'm Brent. My wife, Ellen, my late wife, Ellen Ottaway, was a hospital pharmacist for 30 years. And she was often devastated by what she saw in the way of opioid and other addictions. Like any complex problem, it requires a multifaceted solution. We need to stop physicians from overprescribing, for starters. We need to crack down on places like the small West Virginia town where millions of drugs were sent to a small town so that they could be trafficked elsewhere. But also we do need to change the culture of hopelessness and provide jobs and opportunities and hope.
The opioid crisis is a symptom of a much deeper problem. It's been stated in various ways already down the table. But we have to speak to the real cultural issues that are creating this self-destructive behavior, this hopelessness. It is partially economic, but largely it's the decision to take God out of schools. We have got to restore prayer in schools, student-led, not administration-led. And that's going to mean there's going to be student-led Islamic prayers as well. We have to accept that as a culture. But we need Christian prayer in schools. Students pray. It's just that they're not allowed to do it publicly. They're not allowed to bring a Bible into school. That has to change. We need to speak to that. And that's how we're going to solve this, is by restoring the fundamental Christian beliefs and practices that made this country great. That's where we need to start to solve these symptoms.
As a government official, I've worked on this issue along with everybody else that's involved in this problem. There's no easy answer. People work with prevention, certainly. There's lots of folks that are involved in that. Education, we try to start as young as possible now in schools and elsewhere to tell people what to stay away from, the dangers of it, what happens. And law enforcement is definitely a large part of this, and trying to get the bad guys off the streets, talk about border control, other things that all factor into that. We know now that short-term treatment is not going to work. It simply doesn't. I think every professional agrees with that. We see recreational use now. We're going to see that in Pennsylvania with marijuana, with the way the governor is taking the direction of the bill that was passed. It was unintended to be used for recreational use, but that'll how it'll end up being in Pennsylvania. We see physicians overprescribing, probably the largest problem we have. So we've tried to regulate prescriptions, we've tried to regulate doctors, and we're working on that actively. I hosted a Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General event in Fulton County just a few weeks ago. Again, a Democrat, as Dr. Madonna said, bipartisan effort. Fulton County is the #2 county in the state, percentage-wise, with opioid overdoses.
Thank you. We might have to take a deep breath. That's finished one round 8. We're not going to get completely through a second round. We've got about 20 minutes left before we go to the closing statements. So we're back to Ben here. I'm going to start with this question, and it has to do, this event is sponsored by the Bedford Chamber, so I've got to ask an important business question. In general, talk about what you would do if elected to be sure that American companies were alive and well and performing well and had a good environment. And I'll put it another way, what would you do to encourage new companies to come to the Bedford counties of not just Pennsylvania, but of the United States?
So there's 2 things that I actually want to do if elected. One of the things is President Trump, back in 2016, campaigned on it and tried to include it in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. He wanted to restructure the tax brackets from the current 7 to 4, lowering the federal income tax rates of millions of middle-class Americans and small business owners, putting more money back into their pockets to be able to spend how you choose freely, to be able to invest back into the local economies. I fully support that and would fight for that. Another big thing would also be that I want to set up a loan program, 0% interest loan out of my own salary, $5,000 for each county that I would represent. It'd be a total of $50,000 every year. And I think that Congressman getting paid $174,000 a year while living in Shippensburg, it's a little bit more expensive in Shippensburg to live there, but it ain't that expensive. So you can give back to the community somehow. That program would be for a small business entrepreneur to open a small business and create jobs within our communities.
Thank you. Travis?
I don't think it's the government's job to manage an economy, or but the government can get out of the way of people. So I think that's the most important thing government can do. As far as important things that are drivers of the economy, you have to have a good infrastructure. That's roads, rails, communications, utilities to service those businesses. And it's all location. It's just like real estate. We need to have regulations be as trimmed as possible and not dissuade people from trying to be entrepreneurial and creative. And we have regulations that don't make sense at the local, county, state, and federal level. Taxes are too high in many cases, and the government overspending, the deficit spending we have has caused a crisis in the confidence of the American people and the business owners, so they are less likely to invest long term. I have an idea with infrastructure bonds. I think that we can provide Americans infrastructure bonds, ordinary Americans, and we can fund our infrastructure and even the wall if people can invest in small denominational bonds and we receive the benefit of that. It will be debt, but it will be debt that is owed to Americans and not to foreign companies or foreign lands.
Thank you.
Doug Mastriano. No more one-sided stupid trade deals. Renegotiate existing trade deals that hurt Americans, that take away American jobs, that benefit foreign countries, such as NAFTA. And that's just a start. It's time to roll back costly and weighty regulations. Think about how long it takes you and how much money it takes businessmen to do an environmental survey on the impact of new construction. And it just bogs down the process, costs us more money, and who pays for it again? We do. It's easier and cheaper to build factories and what have you in Mexico than the United States. No more. There should be incentives to build the United States, bring back jobs in this district. I'm sick and tired of watching these empty houses, empty farms, and rusting factories that once made this district great and powerful and influential. It's time to look out for our people first. It's time to bring the jobs back, our kids back after they graduate from college to work here because it's a rich, prosperous, hopeful place. The government needs to stop picking winners And the bottom line is we need the government off our backs and out of our wallets.
Bernie Washball II. As I mentioned earlier, I've been working on a plan, an economic development plan for our district. And here's what I think we need to do. We work independently as these small communities. We have Altoona, in essence, doing their own thing, Chambersburg, maybe, Bedford, all working independent of each other. What I'd like to do is get us all working together for economic development. You know, the federal government has already said that they're going to be putting out an infrastructure bill. And what we need to do as a district is get ourselves together. We need to identify the areas where we want these projects and be ahead of it, so that when this money becomes available, when they do it in the middle of the night, that next morning at 7 a.m., I can go down there and say, hey, this is the projects that we want to do in District 13. I want to have them already identified, already studied, and ready to go. You know, on a national level, I'll help President Trump with those issues, but personally, I'm going to focus on what I can do to help District 13.
I'm Brent. I grew up working in Carol's Carousel, my mother's gift shop, that warbled along for almost 20 years before it finally went out of business. I'm very sensitive to the plight of small business and the impact that heavy regulation can have on them. But I think we need to look beyond that, and the big issues. Infrastructure is one, and by infrastructure, that's not just roads and bridges, it's water systems, it's broadband internet access that enables people to start businesses, to become entrepreneurial. We need to educate well. That brings businesses. Companies want to be where there's an educated, well-educated workforce. And the other thing, as we encourage entrepreneurship, I think we need especially to encourage women to get involved and to run more business.
America has an out-of-control spending problem. We have $21 trillion. We're north of $21 trillion already, and we're growing our debt by another trillion or more every year. The spigot has to be turned off. It hasn't done anything to improve the prosperity of America. In fact, it's toxic charity. It hurts us because with those dollars that trickle down from the federal government come mandates and regulations. And when the grants stop and when the subsidies stop, we're in worse shape than if we hadn't started with them. I'm for a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach. It doesn't work. Socialism is basically what we're practicing with the federal government sending huge sums of money out and creating this debt that's constraining our credit markets, and it's hurting the mindset of the people, which is that they become dependent on this philosophy of top-down. We need bottom-up. We need to organize our communities in such a way we begin to solve our problems where we own the problem and we own the solution. That's how we grow out of this.
Business looks at what their costs are and make decisions based on that, essentially. Taxes is the #1 issue that they face. That's always the flag they see in Pennsylvania because we have a high corporate net income tax rate here. The President and Congress just passed a bill that will help us immensely in that issue, with that issue. Regulation, though, is equally as bad. The President is doing away with 20 old regulations for every new one that's implemented. And labor costs are the other one. Minimum wage discussion, always a bad thing for growing our economy. The skewed system we have nationally and across our country from state to state with labor versus management laws and regulations that favor the unions, something else that's hurting the growth of our economy. So if we can get government out of the way of progress, we can do a lot better. And we also need an education system that's going to focus on workforce development. Instead of forcing more kids to go into college, look at the opportunities that are ahead of them for a good, viable trade.
Dr. John Joyce. Recently, I visited the Bedford County Development Association to develop those opportunities further. The key factor is you need to have family-sustaining wages. You're looking for jobs that someone can use and support an entire family. These entities occur with the development like I saw at BCDA. I'm impressed with Bedford County. I'm actually hopeful for Bedford County, and I think that I can work for you as your representative in Washington. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to Travis for the next question. All right, here we go. Congress's approval rating is at a stunning 15% positive. The fact of the matter is that many voters have just simply lost their trust and confidence in Congress. So if you were elected, what are the one or two things that you would do to try to restore integrity and trust of your constituents here in the 13th, but around the nation as a whole?
Okay, so my full-time job at this point in time is to work for local government. So I've been in the infrastructure field for 20 plus years, roads, bridges, schools, highways, hospitals, all sorts of things. And my job is also to be a liaison between agencies for projects, and I frequently check into legislation as to how it's going to affect local government. I make myself available 24/7, 365. I'm the chief water operator, 2 water systems. People call me for, well, even people who don't live in my township call me. I think that you have to have dedication to service. And I've made my life about serving other people. I've never been seeking money, fame, or position or title. I've just been a person working to help the organizations that I'm working for and get the work done. I'm a detail-oriented man. I'm a task-oriented man. People put things on my desk that they either can't figure out or they don't want to do. And it's sink or swim. I always figure things out. I'm a problem solver. I enjoy doing that. So transparency is an important thing, and working with people and helping people and serving people, that will increase the confidence that they have in their representative.
Doug Mastriano. It's simple and it's easy. Do what you said you're going to do in the campaign trail. Deliver on the promises. When I saw the omnibus budget 3 weeks ago delivered by the Republican-led House and Senate, and leading the way was Nancy Pelosi and Chuck E. Schumer, celebrating, rejoicing, and laughing that they got everything they want. The Republicans were acting spending more than Democrats even wanted. $1.3 trillion budget, record-setting. Houston, we got a problem. At times, I don't know what to say. The Republicans said, hey, give us the House, we'll slow down the Obama agenda. And it didn't happen. They gave them the House. Give us the Senate. Okay, still. Give us the presidency. And still they dither. In that budget, the Republicans went out of the way to deprive the president. Okay, I understand it's discretionary, but they put language in there saying you can't spend the $1.3 billion on a new wall. You can just work on the old existing wall that's broken down. That was his chief campaign promise. I don't understand why the Republicans aren't working with our leader, our president, who's trying to save this nation from the awful situation it is in. Even that budget passed by the Republicans are still spending, even today, $500 trillion on abortion. I have blood on my hands. I say no, no more. Gender reassignment surgery in the Department of Defense. I say no. It's time for change. It's time to put leaders in there who live up to their promises.
Thank you.
Bernie Washaball II. I think one of our big issues, particularly in Congress and in government in general, is career politicians. These people get in there, they do things for the special interest and the individuals that support them and give them money, and that's not good for the people of this country. I think an important thing to do is when you say you're going to do something, you deliver on it. And for me, and I keep referring to this as a businessman, a good economy makes a lot of our other problems sort of not seem quite as bad. So my emphasis is going to be on that. It's going to be on economic development. I keep saying it, but to me, it's very important. And be available. I can assure you that if I'm elected, you'll see me probably more than you want to. It won't be just during election time, because I want to know what's going on in our communities. And I can assure you that I'll be working to fix them for you.
Brent.
I'm Brent, and I am a reasonable man. That will make me an outlier when I first arrive in Washington. But I believe that people need to work together to find solutions, and that the problem with this Congress is largely ideologues who refuse to budge and who will stand by and allow bad legislation to go through rather than work together to do the best we can. American government is messy. It's supposed to be messy. You're supposed to state your positions, you're supposed to negotiate, you argue, and you come up with a solution. That's not what Congress has been trying to do. That's the way I live my life. And that's what I'm going to take to Washington.
The problem is that Congress is a swamp. In fact, that's being nice, it's a cesspool, and it stinks. To say they have 15% job approval probably is being optimistic and kind. I think it's in the single digits. It's well below used car salesmen and whatever else is annually at the bottom of the ladder. What we need is to eliminate career politicians, and we have done that. In 2016, I came close to defeating, in fact, half a gnat's eyelash and defeating an incumbent. I will fight that hard in Washington for you to eliminate other career politicians. They only care about the next re-election, not the next generation. We need term limits. I think I'm the only candidate here who has pledged to, on the national pledge, for term limits. I would eliminate the pension. Why are we wanting to get rid of these guys and then we're willing to give them a pension? We don't need a pension for congressmen. We need to tie pay to performance. If the budget's not on time, they shouldn't get paid. And all laws that Congress passes have to first apply to them.
Thank you.
What I've always tried to do in public life is be straightforward and keep my promises. People they want somebody they can trust, they can look to, they know what positions you have and what your personal integrity is and what it means to you, and they know how you make decisions, what you base your decisions on. I think the problem we have generally with Congress is that they have not kept their promises as a collective institution. Building the wall is something the president wanted. People voted for the president's agenda, whether anybody likes it or not, in Congress. They voted for that agenda. Strong numbers across the country voted for his agenda. But the two biggest issues that I think people are very unforgiving about are that Congress, after saying so for many years, cannot repeal Obamacare. They said that over and over and over again, and then when they had the opportunity, they haven't done it. And defunding Planned Parenthood. I can't believe they put that money in this last spending bill to fund Planned Parenthood again. And that's why people don't trust Washington.
Thank you.
The question is, what impact would I want to protect? What impact could I provide for you? Recently, President Trump's tax reform went through. There were two prongs to that. The corporate tax rates are permanent. The tax rates of the workers are temporary. My goal would be simply, I would work hard to make the workers' tax benefits. What's occurred in President Trump's plan? I would work heart and soul to make them permanent. Realize that the corporate big guys, they got all the breaks. And the workers got a bone thrown to them. I will work hard to make those tax rates permanent for the workers in America.
Go ahead, Ben.
One of the biggest things is being brash and honest. Our president is not a well-polished speaker, neither am I. When somebody says and makes a promise that they say, well, we're not going to raise your taxes, and then they do, I call them out. And I don't care. I don't care for them. I don't care for their lies, their BS, a bunch of trail of crap. They promise this thing. I don't make promises I know I can't keep. This I promise, I promise, I promise. Why are you making promises you know you can't keep? The politicians, they do this every time. They get up on a stage and they say that they're going to do this, this, and this, and then they never fix it, so that when the next guy runs, they have something to campaign on. They shouldn't be that way. And I love the fact that President Trump calls people out. I love when he goes out and says about the SOBs on the football field should stand. I love it because I'm a Marine Corps veteran. We don't need polished speakers. We need people that walk, talk, and act the same as the rest of the people in the district. People that actually care enough to come back to the district, show up and knock on doors personally as an elected official and say, hey, how's it going? What can we do to help fix problems for you? So that's hopefully what would happen with me as an elected official.
Okay, we're finished with the round of questioning, right? So here's what's going to happen. You get 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Anything you want to talk about, 2 minutes. It's all yours. So you want to respond? Yeah. You started the last one. So we'll come back here to the very beginning, and then we'll go around. All 8 of you will get your full 2 minutes. Go ahead. Ben.
So I'm running for this election. As of recently, people have said that, at first they said, you're too young. You're 24 years old, you're too young to even be elected. Apparently the federal government, the FEC, didn't think so. They let me be on the ballot. So the age isn't an issue. But as a volunteer firefighter, as a teenager, I stood out in the middle of Hurricane Sandy when it battered the East Coast, directed traffic 2:30 in the morning with 70-mile-an-hour winds and rain filling up our firefighting boots and everything. And I was a teenager, and we were going to have school the next day, but they had to close down because of Hurricane Sandy and all the torrential downpours and flooding. My point being is I've given a lot to this community, and I know that I'm only 24 years old, and I have a long life ahead of me. I do want to win. I really, really want to win this election so I can help put the people of this country in this district first. But if I don't win, I realize it's not, the one and done. There's plenty of other opportunities for me to help my community and my district, and no matter what happens, it's God's will, and I'm willing to follow along with what God has planned for this district. I love my communities, I love my country, and I'm willing to fight like hell to put all of you first, and to repel back the smooth-talking career politicians who have disgraced us for the last 4 decades. Thank you, and thank you everybody for coming out tonight, and God bless all of you.
Okay, so I'm the working man in this race. Been here as a working man, and I understand the dilemmas of common people. I live those experiences, and I've seen firsthand that the government isn't working for people. It's not working for our small businessmen or small farmers. It's not working for guys like me. It's not working for most people like you. And we have to have the American dream. We have to get government out of the way. Government's been messing everything up, which is one of the main reasons I'm here. I have a responsibility to individually, I recognize, to hand this country over in a better shape than it was when I had received it. I was a young boy in the 80s, and I can remember Americans felt better about your future. And for the longest time, we've been on the wrong track. We have to right this ship. And these problems are complicated, but it starts with feeling what the ordinary people are feeling. Some people don't live an ordinary life, and they don't really understand, I think, what the dilemmas are for common people. And I have a heart for that. And, this is just, it's something that I have to do. Like I say, I trust no man like I do the one I look at in the mirror. And this is a part of my Christian walk, to do what I'm doing. My family's ancestors, more than 24 were in the Revolutionary War. They were in the militias and some in the Continental Line. That's my family heritage. They were some of the first people to stand up and fight for liberty. That's vitally important to me. And I am not going to hand this country over in worse shape. Not for my children or not for yours. And I'll work my fingers to the bone to make it happen. That's what I bring to this table, and I think my experience is very adequate here with my former military intelligence experience. I understand foreign affairs and our capabilities and doctrines of our enemies.
Thank you.
I am Doug Mastriano. Benjamin Franklin said at the end of the Constitutional Convention, "Now you have a republic if you can keep it." There were times we almost lost this republic across the millennia and generations. We can think about 1863 during the American Civil War, 1812, 1941. I also say 2016, we are on the cusp of losing the United States of America as it was designed and desired to be. And as I knew it, as I fought for it. And despite the radical leftist agenda of Barack Hussein Obama, the Republicans did their daydream and made speeches and worked against us oftentimes. But we have a new lease on life in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania rose up in 2016 and said no to the agenda, no to the radicalism. But the battle has just begun. It's time to take the fight to DC. But we need fighters, not talkers. We need doers, not ditherers. 2018 is especially a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in that so many career politicians are leaving. We can change the demeanor and makeup of the Congress this year. It is rare. I am your man for the job. So what does Doug Mastriano bring to the table? Unmatched leadership. I've led men and women from across the state, this nation, and even this world in some of the most difficult and daunting missions. As far as service, I'm the only combat veteran here with 4 combat tours, and I have a lifetime of service to this nation. As far as experience, I grew up like you, lower middle class family. I had to work hard to achieve this. I am a working man. I had to clean hundreds of toilets for one job in a business. It was interesting to see how the businessmen treated me in that job. Also security guard, pizza guy, dishwasher, on and on. The only guy with real foreign international experience. I've designed the policy and strategy to defend our NATO allies in Eastern Europe. I've briefed presidents and prime ministers overseas, generals from across the world, on how to safeguard our nation and national interests and our allies. I've experience in Africa, Asia, Middle East, Europe, and of course with Russia. And vision, most importantly, without a vision the people perish, the Bible says. I believe that our best days in this country are yet ahead, and that together we can safeguard this nation and make America better than it was and better than how we received it from our fathers. God bless you. This is Doug Mastriano. I'm reporting for duty, and I'm ready to serve you.
Thank you.
Bernie Washball II. The Washball family's been in Pennsylvania for 283 years. We landed in Philadelphia Harbor on September 23rd, 1734, and I know that because one of our family members did research on our family. So we've been here a long time. I was born in this district, my father was born here, and we care about the interest of the people in this area. I'm a hotel and real estate developer. I take a vacant piece of ground and I turn it into a functioning, operating business. My projects put thousands of people to work, plumbers, electricians, landscapers, go down the list, thousands of people to work. Once these projects are done, there's permanent jobs. In addition to that, my hotel projects bring in millions of dollars to our community. Every year, people come, they stay in these hotels, they pay for their room, they check in, they go to the area and do shopping, they go to the restaurants. I know how to do it. I know how to bring money to our district. We gave the keys for our store to the career politicians in Washington, D.C. When we went back to check on things, we found that the cash register is empty. It's time for us to go back and get our keys back, and that's what I plan to do. The United States of America, with our problems, is still the greatest country on earth. God bless you.
Hi, I'm Brent Ottaway, and I would like to thank the Chamber and the sponsors, and most of all, I would like to thank you for coming out and making an effort to become informed before going into the voting booth. I'm asked why I'm doing this as a Democrat in the most Republican of districts in the state of Pennsylvania, and if I actually think I can win. And I started out just to give people a choice, but as I spoke to people around this district and discovered people whose life savings had flown because of a broken hip, or how many of you know someone who has had a catastrophic health experience that has bankrupted them or nearly so? I mean, there are complex problems that need to be solved, and we can't do that with people who are in their corners at the extremes and whose definition of future is between today and my next election. I am opposed to Washington's war on the future. I have 5 children. When Ellen and I came here, we chose to live in this region. And when we came here, we had an infant daughter. Our collection is now 5. My youngest is graduating from high school, which is why I decided it is time to do this. Can I win? Yes. I believe I can. The Republican Party that I used to be part of, that my father was an elected official in, is not what it used to be. Best example of that we didn't really talk about is the Tax Reform Act, which sold out the people it was supposed to benefit. I'm out of time.
Thank you.
We'll talk later.
Art Halverson. Thank you all for coming. You're the reason we're here because this is a job interview. You're going to choose from this 3 tables your next congressman. So thank you for caring enough as a voter to come out tonight. Thank you, Kelly, for your leadership. Dr. Madonna, you're facilitating, keeping us all in line. As a young blue-collar kid, at age 17, I joined the United States Coast Guard, received an appointment, I don't know how, but probably the last appointment that was issued to the Coast Guard Academy. I went on to drive an icebreaker, to fly helicopters as an instructor, as a test pilot, and then, of course, as an operational pilot, saving many lives out at sea. Extraordinary challenges. I'm up to challenges. They excite me. Went on to go to the United States Air War College after collecting an MBA along the way, having an unlimited contracting warrant as a contracting officer in the United States government. But ending up in Washington, D.C. at the end of my career, 29-year active duty career. After 9/11, I was put in charge of reorganizing the entire Coast Guard, rewriting the maritime security plans for the United States, helping Tom Ridge stand up the Department of Homeland Security, a job as big as standing up DOD after World War II, helping write the budget, writing the strategic plan. I've had lots of Washington senior level experience solving problems, writing policy on the military side. I want to do that on the legislative side. I worked with 40 different legislatures in reorganizing the Coast Guard. I went on to start a business from scratch. And then I went on to take on a dynasty, a political dynasty in the 9th Congressional District, as it was known then. I'm the only guy that did that. I'm going to take that same perseverance, steadfastness, and courage to Congress to work for you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly and Rick and Marty and others that put this together. This chamber in Bedford County does a tremendous job, and they do an exemplary job this evening. And Dr. Madonna, you're always a gentleman. It's good to see you. Thank you for your work here. 12 years ago, I ran a campaign for the state senate, and many people thought that I could never win that campaign. We fought the establishment that year. We were outspent 6-1, and we asked for the help of the people in this district, including the people here in Bedford County. They trusted us. Since then, the people of this area have been very, very gracious and kind to Charlotte and I. They've invited us into their homes, to their farms and businesses, to their churches, and we feel that we have friends throughout the entire area. I've worked hard. I've kept my word. And Charlotte and I are asking for your help again. I know this area better than anybody else on this platform. I know what your concerns are, how our economy works here, our transportation system, the challenges our local governments face, the issues facing our schools and our youth, and the opioid problem. I know how government works, and I know how the legislative system works in Washington as well as Harrisburg. I can hit the ground running if elected to be your next congressman. I appreciate all the support that you've given me in the past, the kindnesses you've given my family, and I hope that I've earned your vote to be your next United States Congressman. Thank you.
Again and finally, after a long evening, I'm Dr. John Joyce. I'm a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, common sense conservative. I want to be your ears, your eyes in Washington. I know that President Trump has been a role model for me and has outlined that you can change things in Washington without being a career politician. He's allowed an outsider to be seriously considered to be your representative in the United States Congress. I am pro-military. My wife is a United States Navy veteran, and I'm so proud of that. I've worked in the Veterans Administration Hospital. I've seen the problems. I've heard the people talk to me about those. My pledge to the veterans is simple. I feel that any veteran should be able to go into any hospital in the United States and receive their care. I'm not talking about a 16-page form that you need to fill out with 3 pre-authorizations. You served our country, you defended our freedoms. We as a nation have to respond to that and live up to the promise that we have given you. I will work hard to make that happen. I was a work-study student at Penn State. I've been given incredible opportunities. I was a work-study student along with some people from Bedford County who are in the orchard industry. I've been to your dairy farms. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to come and talk to you tonight. I think that as a small business owner, I sign paychecks twice a month. I recognize what happens. I know what's happened with President Trump's tax agenda. I see what can occur, and I pledge to you, I will work so hard to make those temporary tax benefits, those temporary tax cuts, permanent for the workers, not just for the businesses. And finally, God bless you. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for allowing us to have a civilized conversation among people who want to be your representative. I humbly ask that you consider me for that. God bless you.
Thank you. How about a round of applause for the candidates? Before we let you go, Marty Malone will close the forum. I do want to thank you for coming out, and couldn't care whether we agree or disagree. The level of discourse tonight was something we ought to be proud of, and I think that deserves a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marty Malone, and I'm impressed. It's 9 o'clock on the nose. Good job, Terry Madonna. I'm the chair of the Government Affairs Committee here in Bedford with the Bedford Chamber. I'd like to thank our candidates for the Pennsylvania 13th Congressional District tonight. I'd like to thank our moderator, Dr. Terry Madonna, our sponsors, Lehman Engineers and Sniffer McGraw, our hosts, the Bedford Area School District, as well as our AV specialist, Dan Wakefield, and the Bedford HS Interact Club, who were kind enough to be our ushers this evening. I'd like to thank the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee and the fantastic Chamber staff, and thank the media for being here tonight. On behalf of the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee and the Board of Directors, we thank all of those who took time to hear the candidates vying to be our next congressman. We hope that you will exercise your right to vote on May 15th and continue to support the Chamber's efforts to make this region the best possible place to live, work, play, and prosper. Good night, everybody. Thank you.